I want you to take a really good look at this space. This is Tutankhamun, preserved almost perfectly for over 3,300 years. Or how about this one, Ramesses the Great, one of the most powerful pharaohs ever, and we can still look directly at his face today. It really makes you wonder, right? Why? Why would an entire civilization pour all of its genius, its wealth, and its most advanced technology into stopping a body from decaying?
It's so easy to look at all this and just think, wow, they were obsessed with death. But here's the thing, that's completely wrong. The ancient Egyptians were not obsessed with death at all, they were obsessed with eternal life. And to understand their incredible solution, we first have to understand the problem they were trying to solve.
So to really get how they pulled off this amazing feat, we have to first understand why it was such a huge deal to them. This wasn't just some old tradition. For them, this was the solution to a massive spiritual engineering problem.
You see, for them, your life here on Earth, that was just the beginning. Death was simply a transition, like walking through a doorway. A doorway that led to a really dangerous journey to the field of reeds, which was basically their version of paradise. But here's the catch. To even start that journey, your soul needed a permanent physical home base back in this world.
They believed your soul wasn't just one thing. It was split into a few key parts. Two of the most important were the Ka and the Ba. Think of the Ka as your spiritual twin, your life force. After you died, it needed a home to come back to, your physical body, and it still needed you to leave it food and drink. And then you had the Ba. This was your personality, your essence, and they pictured it as a bird with a human head. The Ba could fly between our world and the afterlife, but every single night it had to find its way back to its one specific body to rest.
So, this is the crucial point, right? What happens if the body decays, if it just rots away into nothing? Well, the Ka has no home and it starves. The Ba gets lost forever, unable to recognize the pile of dust that used to be you. This was the ultimate horror for an Egyptian. They called it the second death, not just dying physically, but the complete and total annihilation of your very existence for all eternity. Their entire civilization was built around preventing that.
And that, of course, brings us to the how. Their solution was mummification, a process that happened in a place called the House of Beauty. Now, this wasn't some spooky morgue. You should think of it more like a sacred laboratory, where high priests, often wearing the mask of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming, did their work.
The whole incredibly detailed process, from the very first cut to the final wrap, was a sacred ritual that took exactly 70 days. Not 69, not 71, 70. And every single one of those days had a specific purpose.
This super refined process can really be broken down into 4 main physical stages. Each one was a total masterpiece of ancient science and sacred ritual. So let's walk through them.
Okay, this first step is, well, it's kind of shocking. They believed the heart was the center of all intelligence and emotion. The brain, to them, it was just useless skull stuffing. So the priest would take this long metal hook, stick it up through the nose, and literally whisk the brain into a liquid so they could just pour it out. Seriously.
The heart, though? Oh, that was a completely different story. It was treated with absolute reverence. It was the one major organ they almost always left inside the body. But why? Because they believed that in the afterlife, your heart would be weighed on a giant scale against a single feather from Mot, the goddess of truth. If your heart was heavy with bad deeds, a monster would eat it. The heart was your passport, your only ticket to eternity.
So what about the other big organs? The lungs, the liver, the stomach, and the intestines. They were carefully taken out through a small cut in the side. But you couldn't just throw them away. They were part of you. So they were cleaned, preserved, and each one was placed into its own sacred container called a canopic jar. And each jar was protected by one of the 4 sons of the god Horus.
Okay, now we're getting to the absolute secret sauce of the whole operation. The magic ingredient was a substance called natron. It's this naturally occurring mix of salts that you can find in dried-up lake beds in Egypt. And what does natron do? It's a powerful desiccant. It just sucks all the moisture out of everything it touches. And without moisture, the bacteria that cause decay can't survive.
After the body was all cleaned out, it was completely buried under a huge mound of this natron salt. And get this, it stayed there for 40 long days. This step was everything. That salt would slowly draw every last drop of fluid out of the body's tissues, basically stopping decomposition dead in its tracks.
So after 40 days, you have a perfectly preserved body, but it's pretty shrunken and thin. And remember, the Ba has to be able to recognize its home. So the priests would begin the restoration phase. They'd stuff the body with things like linen and sawdust to give it a more lifelike shape.
massage the skin with special oils, and then coat the whole thing in a thick layer of resin, which acted like a waterproof, airtight seal.
And now for the final stage, the wrapping. This was so much more than just wrapping a body in cloth. It was a complex, layered ritual. We're talking hundreds of meters of fine linen, with every single finger and every single toe wrapped individually. All the while, priests would be placing magical amulets, like the scarab beetle for rebirth and the Eye of Horus for protection, in between the layers while chanting powerful spells. And to top it all off, a mask with a person's face on it was placed over the head just to be extra sure the ba would never get lost.
But you gotta understand, this incredible technology wasn't just invented overnight, not even close. It was the result of nearly 3,000 years of experimentation, of trial and error, of failures and breakthroughs. It was a slow, deliberate march towards perfecting the art of cheating death.
The whole process actually started by accident. Way back in the early days, Egyptians just buried their dead in simple, shallow graves in the desert. The hot, dry sand naturally wicked away all the moisture, creating these accidental, natural mummies. But as they got richer, they started building fancy tombs. And now, sealed away from that magical desert sand, the bodies just decayed. This created a terrifying spiritual crisis. It forced them to invent a way to artificially copy what the desert did naturally, a process that hit its absolute peak during the New Kingdom, the time of Tutankhamun and Ramesses.
When you really boil it all down, the ancient Egyptians saw eternal life as more than just faith. They saw it as a technical problem, a problem that could be solved. They believed that with enough knowledge, precision, and the right rituals, they could literally hack the laws of nature to overcome death itself.
So in the end, mummification was this incredible fusion of cutting-edge science and deeply held spiritual belief. By preserving the physical body, they weren't just making a mummy. They were building an eternal home for the soul, a permanent vessel designed to last for millions of years. And honestly, when you look at the faces of their pharaohs today, you kind of have to admit, in a way, they actually did it.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. What do you make of their idea of a second death? The idea that the ultimate end isn't just dying, but being completely forgotten, with absolutely no place for your soul to come home to. It's a pretty powerful thought. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.